the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. You will hear a customer phoning a company representative to complain about her new purchase. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Hello, is this the Dynamo Motorcycle Company?
Yes, it is. How can I help you?
Well, I have an instruction manual here for your new electric motorcycle, but I'm not satisfied with the purchase at all.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but don't worry. I'm sure we can sort this out.
The woman is talking about an electric motorcycle, so electric motorcycle has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello, is this the Dynamo Motorcycle Company?
Yes, it is. How can I help you?
Well, I have an instruction manual here for your new electric motorcycle, but I'm not satisfied with the purchase at all.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but don't worry. I'm sure we can sort this out. Before we do anything, can you tell me the model number?
At the top of the instruction manual here, it gives the model number RTY34.
TY34. Okay. Now, what's the nature of your complaint?
It's many things, actually. The biggest problem is that you say in your manual that the battery will take the motorcycle 30 kilometres.
That's right.
Well, it's lucky to take me 8. The battery is usually flat by then, often leaving me stuck at the side of the road.
Are you sure you're charging it correctly?
I'm fairly sure. I follow all the instructions and plug it in for a long time.
And are you sure you charge it for the required 3 hours?
I charge it until the charging light goes off, and that's 2 hours, so that should be enough. And there's a serious design fault with this motorcycle. When you're riding it, there's no meter to show you how much power is left, so you actually don't know when the machine is going to stop working.
There's a voltage gauge.
Yes, but that tells you nothing. The needle fluctuates about from 55 to 45, so whatever it says is meaningless.
According to the manual, you're meant to charge the battery if the needle falls under 50 volts.
But even when you charge it, it can go below 45. As I said, the needle just waves all over the place. The result is that I'm always worried that the bike will leave me stranded in the middle of nowhere.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
Sure, but what are you going to do about it?
Unfortunately, we don't have a refund policy, but if you take the bike to one of our shops, our mechanics will look at it. Perhaps there's a problem that we can fix. The gauge, for example.
The other problem is the battery. I actually weighed it, and it's almost 6 kilograms, yet you say in your manual that it weighs only 3. I can barely pick the thing up, so it's not 3 kilograms at all.
Maybe you purchased the wrong model by mistake.
I doubt that very much. Basically, I think I've been defrauded, and I'd like to know what you're going to do about it.
All right, I'll put you through to our complaints department.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Hello?
Complaints department here. Apparently you have a complaint?
Yes, I do. Let me tell you all about...
It's all right. Our representative has already informed me about your problem. It's probably just a misunderstanding. I'm sure we can work something out. Right now, I need to take down some details.
All right.
Can I have your name, please?
Jessie Parkinson. That's Jessie and Parkinson, Parkinson. Parkinson.
All right. What shall we list this complaint under? Parts, service, or performance?
Well, the meter isn't accurate at all, so that's parts, isn't it?
Yes, perhaps, but you do feel more generally that the motorcycle doesn't meet the operational standards as advertised, so it's probably better to tick performance here.
Can we tick both, parts and performance?
No, we can only tick one, so let's not call it parts. We'll go with performance. Now, we may post some further forms and questionnaires to you, so would you mind giving me your address?
Certainly, it's 45 Melrose Road.
Melrose, M-E-L and Rose. Okay. Now, your phone number?
Just use my mobile phone. That's 0928 982 453.
453. Okay, and if we have any follow-up questions, what time is best for ringing you? Morning, afternoon, night time?
Well, I work as a secretary from 9 to 5, but I do get a lunch break which gives me some free time. This break used to be 12:30 to 1:30, but then it changed to an hour later, so it's best to ring me at 2 p.m. since the break now starts at 1:30.
All right. That's all for now. We just need to do our own investigation and we'll probably ring you back tomorrow. I'm sure we can get to the bottom of this.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2. Section 2. You will hear a university administrator telling a group of new students about the central campus buildings and the facilities they provide. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Welcome everyone to the Brandon Complex, the geographical and, we could say, spiritual heart of this university. This is basically where everyone eats too, as you can see by looking around. There are many different cuisines here, Chinese, Indian and Middle Eastern, plus the usual fare of a local type, all in that corner over there. We have many shops here too, but the biggest is Wilson's right there, providing clothing and hardware. That's next to all the restaurants. Now, on the opposite side of Wilson's we have 3 shops. The one in the corner there, closest to the restaurants, is for DVDs. Yes, the DVDs are cheap and affordable, and you can also rent DVD players as well. Moving on. In the corner directly opposite Wilson's is the Student Union office. Incidentally, you are all encouraged to join the Student Union. as a student union card gives you many benefits, including discounts on basically everything you can buy here at the Brandon complex. Outside this complex, on the other side of the road, you can just see it from here in fact, is a building that we call by the rather unusual name, the H Building. Next to this, on the other side of some trees along the main road, is the Engineering Institute, but that doesn't have anything to do with the Brandon complex. One last thing is that just outside this door, near us here, you can see a grassy oval patch. Well, that's the playing field for what we simply call the fitness room, which is alongside. So you can put on some calories here at the restaurants and then burn them off at the fitness room afterwards. Oh, I forgot to mention this shop right here, in the middle, beside the student union. It's the bookshop. And as you can see, it's always busy, always popular. You can buy newspapers, magazines and stationery there, plus a few clothing items as well, just as you can at Wilson's. Why don't you go and take a look right now?
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
Now, I'd like to tell you a bit more about one of the buildings here, namely the H Building. Despite its bland name, you might be interested in what goes on there. It is our main recreational centre, with halls, offices and space available for a variety of activities, mostly for those who want to get fit. For example, if you're interested in yoga, you're in luck, since 4 days a week there are free yoga classes. They have several levels, so if you're a beginner, you'd have to start with that. You can check the schedules on the wall there. Yoga used to be at night, but now it's in the mornings, but not on Wednesdays. Along those same lines, there's aerobic dancing in the afternoon. This shares the same room as the badminton games, which are on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. The aerobics are on the alternate days, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it's not restricted at all. Everyone is welcome to join, although the instructor may divide you up, of course, according to ability. And, just to show how diverse the H Building is, there's even some spiritual solace available there inside the multi-denominational prayer centre, with individual booths and a variety of holy scriptures and texts available to read from all the major religions of the world. That's open all day over the weekend, but not at night time when the rooms are for private booking. Finally, for those of you of a cerebral nature, the University Chess Club operates at night. That's open from 8 p.m. every, is it Wednesday or Monday? No, sorry, Friday. And I think it closes at about 11:30 p.m. So, there's something for everyone in the H Building.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear 3 students, Steve, David and Susan, discussing a science lecture they attended. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
What did you think about the lecture, David?
I thought it was rather interesting. I liked the way it examined the personalities as well as the achievements of the three great physicists of history. It was also interesting in the way it highlighted that all of them had traits in common, despite being removed by centuries. What did you think, Stephen?
I thought, for their times, all three scientists were quite revolutionary. Also, I found it quite funny how Galileo, the Italian physicist, in his great work, what was it called?
It's usually abbreviated to two systems.
Yeah, in the two systems. It isn't really science in the conventional sense at all because it's so funny. How can science have characters, one of them with the name Simplicio?
I think, though, that it stands as significant in that it was the first major work in which authority was challenged. Before that, the church and the state and royalty all held absolute authority over the thinking of the times, but Galileo was brave enough to challenge this by putting forward scientific truth. It simply started everything.
I agree with you there, and it was important, and I don't wish to underestimate that at all, but Galileo's works were somewhat scattered. He couldn't fuse all the ideas together. That had to wait for Newton's Principia.
So why do we call it that? It's not even English.
Well, Newton wrote his Principia in Latin, as was the practice of all scientists of the time. Principia is the key word in the title, which we usually use when referring to this great work.
And I think you're right, David. Its significance lies in the way it finally created order. Before that, things were still confused, disordered, let's say.
That's right, Susan. With Newton, the heavens became like a clockwork mechanism where the orbits and motion of the planets and comets could be predicted. Newton simply created order and suddenly the universe seemed understandable.
Until Einstein came along and confused the hell out of everyone.
Yes, I agree that his relativity is mathematically complex, but once you conquer this, it is remarkably straightforward.
Why did he call it relativity anyway?
Because every motion is relative to the motion of other bodies, hence relativity.
I suppose it's a logical name when you think about it.
Yes, and the significance of the theory lay in the way it explained gravity. Prior to that, gravitational motion or action at a distance was just assumed to happen, but nobody quite knew why. Einstein was successful in providing a theory which explained this, and that theory has lasted to the present day. That makes it quite an accomplishment.
I think we'd have to agree that all three scientists accomplished much in their own way.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
So, David, you're obviously impressed with these three scientists, so it would be interesting to know who you think was the greatest of all.
Well, strictly it's impossible to say, since everything is relative to the times in which these scientists lived. Newton built upon the works of Galileo and Einstein built upon the works of Newton.
But that's not true, actually. Einstein's theories were non-Newtonian, which is why they were so substantially ahead of their time. Given this, I'd say Einstein is the greatest.
Well, certainly, Steve. I accept that Einstein was great and substantially ahead of his time, but Newton's laws are still used today. Galileo, in contrast, didn't form any workable theory that lasted, and Einstein's theories are more just theoretical abstractions.
Well, not really. We still use them for cosmological theories, black holes.
Not for everyday life, not for normal planetary physics. In that sense, Newton has stood the test of time and must be considered the best of all. What do you think, Susan?
Did you know that Newton's first law of motion is often attributed to Galileo? and that Galileo is known as the father of modern science, even by Einstein, which supports him being the greatest. I would say that we must acknowledge the man who first started the scientific revolution. Without his work, we wouldn't have Newton or Einstein.
Oh, Susan, that's ridiculous. Galileo's works were unscientific and almost farcical. Look, here's Peter. Let's ask him. Peter, which scientist do you think was the greatest?
Greatest? The old argument. Einstein is the conventional answer, but when it comes down to it, no one quite knows what his theories really mean. Newtonian physics is at least understandable, so I'll go for him.
Yes, there you go.
Well, we'll just have to agree to disagree on that one.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear a lecturer discussing the marketing and consumption of kangaroo meat. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 33. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 33.
When one thinks of Australia, one of the first images that comes to mind is of the kangaroo. This native marsupial is cute, unusual, and with the baby kangaroo, known as a joey, safely in its mother's pouch, it presents an enduring image often seen on Australian postcards and posters. Yet these animals breed prolifically and have been highly favoured by the widespread clearing of forest and bushland in the past to provide land for the traditional sheep and cattle industry. Ironically, kangaroos breed in such numbers, up to 50 million per year generally, that they have become pests. Consequently, for a long time now, there has been a yearly cull. In other words, their numbers are reduced with controlled and accurate shooting. And here we are talking of shooting millions of them. In the past, the carcasses were simply left out in the bush. Then later, some of the meat was used as cat food, and still is in fact. It is only in recent years that the meat has been used for human consumption, primarily for the overseas market, and one can see why. The meat is, by all accounts, leaner and tenderer than beef. It has a strong taste and minces easily, but it also has some more subtle advantages, and this is a topic I'd like to explore now.
Before you hear the rest of the lecture, you have some time to look at questions 34 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 34 to 40.
Now, there is a market, small but growing, for kangaroo meat. And one interesting reason to encourage its consumption is that it is environmentally friendly to do so. And this itself is for 3 reasons. 1, the traditional cattle and sheep, which mostly fill the rural pastures of Australia, are introduced species and somewhat destructive to the environment. After all, they weren't meant to be there in the first place. Their eating habits destroy the root systems of grass, their hard hooves tear open the ground, and their droppings are heavy and smothering to new growth. Kangaroos, in contrast, have all the opposite traits. They are a native animal existing in harmony with the natural environment there, so replacing cattle with kangaroos makes good sense. The other benefit is that, unlike cows and sheep, kangaroos don't produce methane as a byproduct of their digestion, and methane, along with carbon dioxide, is one of the primary agents of global warming. Finally, since there are too many kangaroos anyway, culling their population for their meat increases the biodiversity of Australia's wildlife. In other words, wallabies, quokkas, wombats and other native animals are given space to increase their numbers also, in the way that it was meant to be before the bushland was extensively cleared. So, one would think such arguments make the case irrefutable. However, there are some serious issues to overcome. The biggest problem is the way eating this meat is perceived. Many people still feel uneasy about eating what is, in effect, a national symbol, and a cute one at that. As well as this perception problem, kangaroos cannot be domesticated or raised within enclosures, as can conventional cattle. Kangaroos simply leap over fences, meaning that it is wild kangaroos that are harvested, which is not always efficient or cost-effective. This process involves trucks, shooters, spotlights, and many people to assist in transporting carcasses from remote locations. Finally, the public are not that happy with guns being the tool to cull these animals, arguing that it is inhumane. Professional shooters are, of course, trained, licensed, and follow a strict code of practice. They use accurate weapons and always aim for the head. The kill, in theory, is instantaneous, yet not necessarily in all cases. Thus, videos of kangaroo shooting taken by animal rights activists can cause great problems for the industry. Yet, what the public needs to realise is that, ultimately, all of their meat requires the killing of animals. And what happens in cattle abattoirs is, in essence, no different to what happens during the average kangaroo cull.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. In the IELTS test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.